Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. Okay, I've gone on for the past couple of weeks about how I keep expecting a major chart shift, and I don't want to normalize the weird crap we've been dealing with the past couple of months, damn near a year now. But we've now had a couple of weeks in a row where the Hot 100 has returned to some veneer of predictable behavior. Might as well treat something as routine, if not normal. That's gotta be a balance, right? Well, if that is the case, I still think the top 10 is gonna shift in a pretty big way pretty soon. And we gotta start off with Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo, still at number 1. And I don't know, I still think this is in a more precarious strait than it might seem. Yeah, the radio surge is absolutely there, but the sales and the streaming are dropping, and that will make it vulnerable, especially when I see more consistent strength from Up by Cardi B, which is now at number 2, which is just bigger on streaming, but just lagging on sales and the radio. But the greater disorder comes with Go Crazy by Chris Brown and Young Thug suddenly bouncing up to number 3, as if from out of nowhere, it suddenly got a boost on sales and especially streaming courtesy of YouTube thanks to a remix, which to me seems like a last-ditch attempt from their label to give this just a little bit more traction before it collapses outright. Now this puts it over the remix of 34 Plus 35 by Ariana Grande with Doja Cat and Megan Thee Stallion at number 4, but really only barely, as this has more sales and streaming, but it's seeing its radio stall out a little bit, at least kept above Blinding Lights by The Weeknd at number 5, which looks to be slowly leaving, but for yet another small sales boost, and that probably kept it above Save Your Tears by The Weeknd at number 6, which, you know what, might actually have more streaming, but is still short on sales and the radio here. Then we got Mood by 24K Golden and Ian Dior, still at number 7, even as it's fading consistently, but it likely only held its position because Calling My Phone by Lil TJ and Black dropped off its debut to number 8. Streaming might be enormous, but without the sales or the radio, it's not gonna stay this high for much longer. We saw this with SZA a month or so back. Then we have Positions by Ariana Grande bump up a spot to number 9, but that's more because Levitating by Dua Lipa and DaBaby is just falling faster on the radio to number 10. Both these songs will likely be gone pretty soon. But while we're here, our losers and dropouts, they almost seem kind of expected at this point. In the latter category, we got the expected fall off for Big Plans by Chris Lane, Happy Does by Kenny Chesney, and Back to the Streets by Saweetie featuring Jhené Aiko, along with Before You Go by Louis Capaldi finally making its quiet exit, likely just on the borderline of clinching a year-end list spot for 2021, but potentially falling off. Good. And the losers, they don't really surprise me here either. The cover of Cover Me Up by Morgan Wallen faded to 95. Afterglow by Ed Sheeran slid down to 94. Man, that song just got no promotion. Hole in the Bottle by Kelsey Ballerini looks like it's making its exit at 69. Long Live by Florida Georgia Line lost all of its album boost down to 60. Body by Megan Thee Stallion looks to be rotating out at 41, having clinched its year-end list spot. Hell, I still like the song, don't at me. And Holy by Justin Bieber is starting its descent down to 27. Good to see. Now, we actually didn't get any returning entries this week for the Hot 100, but there were a couple gains here. Nothing all that good in country, though, as Good Time by Nico Moon rose up to 25, and What's Your Country Song by Thomas Rhett hit 44. And you know, while we're on songs that I don't like, Op Stoppa by YBN Namir and 21 Savage hit 78 off its return last week. And I gotta be honest, I can't really complain that much about our gains here. Off the debut last week, Heartbreak Anniversary by Giveon rose up to 63. La Noche de Noche by Bad Bunny and Rosalia is at 58. No More Parties by Coi Leray got the Lil Durk remix to rise up big to 32. And Best Friend by Saweetie and Doja Cat hit 28. It's gonna be a solid mid-tier hit, and I'm generally fine with that. Good stuff, I like the song still. But I guess that takes us to our pretty reasonably sized list of new arrivals. I think I'm used to the previous sections being a bit longer, but let's not waste time. Let's get started with number 99, Track Star by Mooski.
When it gets hard, She can't take the pain, she can't get scarred. She hurt anyone that gets involved.
Okay, trap and R&B artist who gets traction off of TikTok. We have been down this road many times before, and oh wow, that is a squeaky chipmunk sample lingering around that mix, coupled with some truly bad percussion mixing. Not only is the bass swamping everything out, it's mastered in a way that it's blowing out part of the cymbal and the snare. And that's not even getting into some issues of structure, where Mooski, he can barely stay on his flow, as he's gonna ramble through a Rod Wave / Roddy Ricch impression, except without the soul or the tightness. Just wonderful. I guess the most I can say positive about the song is that it feels somewhat focused in its content, in exploring the girl who runs away from their commitment and then exposes all of their drama online. But it's not like he's all that self-aware about how he's exposing all the same stuff in his art. And the fact that we don't get more of a picture of him kind of really does detract from how likable he can be here. So I don't know, maybe this is an idea that could have worked, but the really shoddy execution, especially the production, does not help. It feels like it was built for a few seconds on TikTok at best off the hook, and nothing else. Let's move on. Number 97, Hello by Pop Smoke featuring a Boogie with the Hoodie.
Yellow, iced out, hello, I'm the king of New York, mellow, black hair by the Regis and pillow, ask around, niggas know me, I'm a year boy Ginobili.
You know, I could have swore that I covered this song when I reviewed Pop Smoke's posthumous album bomb last summer, but turns out I was actually wrong. This was now included on the deluxe edition re-release. But let's be real, the majority of you have not really thought about a Boogie with the Hoodie in a while now, given that his content is the definition of generic and forgettable, and it almost seemed like as soon as a lot of other artists slipped into his more melodic lane with better content and better flows and better hooks, he started slipping out of people's memories, and I kind of admit I'm one of them. And I'm not sure this was the song that anybody wants to bring him back to the forefront here. Aside from some pretty spare piano and trap drill percussion, this is not good by any means. And I hate to say it, but the late Pop Smoke does not help. Yeah, the hook is kinda punchy for what it is, but not nearly as good as the best on that album. And his verse features both the lines, "She off the white, talking Demi Lovato," which given what we now know about her issues with drugs, feels very clickbaity, and including it posthumously in the song really feels icky. But then comes the line, "Hitting like Ike, singing like Tina." Yeah, I didn't give Jay-Z a pass when he pulled this shit. You don't get one either. But then there's a Boogie here who fumbles his rhymes within the first 4 bars of his verse. He tries to flex and then complain about women and doesn't really succeed at either. And then he outright admits that none of his girls are his, but then he references one that you don't know that he says actually is one of his girls. But I think what's most awkward here is how he openly mentions how if Pop Smoke was alive, the two of them would run New York right before Pop Smoke's hook, which doesn't fit any of the vibes or match with any of the content. So yeah, I have been forgiving on a lot of the Pop Smoke songs that have been assembled posthumously, but this is by far one of the worst of them. Not good. Next. Number 96, The Business by Tiësto.
Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
Well, about time we got this one, given that it's been charting worldwide and it's one of Tiësto's biggest mainstream crossover hits to date. Might have only been a matter of time. But then you go back and realize that Tiësto's chart success on the mainstream Hot 100 in the US has been kinda sparse, nearly always with another artist, and the last considerable hits he had were probably Red Lights and Wasted back in 2014. The fact that he's back at all on the Hot 100 kinda shocks me. His usual brand of EDM has not been popular for years now, until you realize with the pitched down vocals from James Bell, this is going to be the same sort of more driving deep house that we saw with the remix of Roses, or more recently the Goosebumps remix here too. But here's the odd thing, even though I will not say that Tiësto has had anything close to a good track record when it comes to singles and albums, this is surprisingly credible. I like how the rougher bass texture creeps in order to augment the groove. I like how the synthesizers accentuate the dour, minor key vibe of the song, and even if I don't really think the mixing is all that great, especially when it comes to electronic music, this is one of those songs where the bleakness is mirrored effectively in the content and the vibe. Hell, you could probably slot this into the realm of angry, really brooding dance cuts, and it would work pretty well. So yeah, even if there's not a place that's open where this could really go off, I will get behind this song. Solid stuff. Check it out. Number 92, Made For You by Jake Owen.
For you, yeah, I was made for you.
Well, about time we got this one too. I was saying Jake Owen should have released this as a single back in 2019 when he put out the album that didn't nearly do as well as it should have, but it turns out this song is actually even older, dating back to his self-titled EP back in 2018. I mean, I guess I'm happy he's finally pushing it years late. It would still fit pretty well. It's a really solid song, one of the best he's put out in recent years. But the funny thing is that, for the most part, it's actually a pretty simple love song, listing a number of things that were made to go together. Jake Owen says that he was made for his partner. That's about as far as it goes, leaning very heavily on his admittedly good charisma to carry the song. But for me, it's the fine details are what makes this click. How the percussion and grooves are so gentle to match with the binaural synchronized guitars and the touches of organ, and that sense of real quiet warmth that makes Jake Owen's work so damn inviting and likable. Now, I'm not gonna say he's doing anything exceptional. He's put out better songs, but it is really damn solid at what it delivers. Definitely recommended. I'm just glad it's finally getting pushed. Next go on my mind is Next, right? Next up, number 90, Zaza by 6ix9ine.
Who got the keys to the locksmith? I'm finna flock shit. Y'all be all up on my dick like it's gonna make that profit. Look.
Yeah, I don't care. And I have to ask, who still does? 6ix9ine got his number one with Nicki Minaj last year, and ever since then, with every flailing attempt to call attention to himself, 6ix9ine falls increasingly flat and irrelevant. Did this only get in the news because of his attempted fight with Meek Mill? Because if so, press, you all realize you're only playing into his hand, right? Leave him alone and wait until he runs out of label money to burn, and he faces the real consequences of not being able to afford his bodyguards. And that's relevant because throughout this entire song, floating on a bunch of breathy flutes and a weirdly underweight groove, it's an extended diss to Lil Durk, specifically by mocking his friends like the late King Von who have been killed in recent months. And the fact that this little SoundCloud waifu hasn't suffered a very bloody accident, it tells me that Lil Durk also knows that 6ix9ine is so obviously working for the feds and is trying to spur a lot of other rappers into confrontation with them to nab them up. But honestly, the song kind of reminds me of when Troy Ave dissed the late Capital Steez. This doesn't make you sound edgy or dangerous or even much of a villain. It makes you such an obvious op who is scummy and beneath any sort of contempt. Look, none of this trash is worth anyone's time. Let him be seen, and then seen no more. Number 88, Chicken Tendies by Clinton Kane.
Cause you deserve the world times two in a simple Sunday afternoons.
Okay, this is interesting. I remember seeing the name Clinton Kane associated vaguely with Martin Garrix, but this solo cut looks like it's based off of TikTok, shocker, and it is different than the Dominic Fike song of a similar name, and I'm not sure if that is a good or a bad thing. Clinton Kane's throatier tones, they remind me a lot of the acoustic singer-songwriters that normally come out of the UK, and they came in the wake of Ed Sheeran, like James Arthur, Dean Lewis, and Louis Capaldi. And I gotta say, that's not really a compliment, as it looks like this song grabbed all the drums and the millennial whoop backing vocals from the early 2010s, so not exactly timely. But for a change of pace, I actually kinda think they work here for an interesting reason. As much as this song might initially read like a song that's pining over an ex and wishing her well in the end, showing some maturity, Clinton Kane actually described how this song was inspired by losing his mother to religious fundamentalism, and that kind of fits the less intimate delivery and is mostly matched by some of the lyrical details. And it's also pretty unique. I can't recall that many songs about a topic like this, and I can imagine anyone who has seen a friend or family member drift towards evangelicalism or fundamentalism or hardline conspiracy theories, they can sympathize with that sense of loss that feels beyond your control, where you're anger and you're grieving, but you're hoping they're gonna feel better about about themselves. So yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised how well this turned out. I got no idea if it's gonna stick around, but I'm fine with it being here. Good song. Number 67, Hit Bout It by Lil Yachty featuring Kodak Black.
50 hoes wanna be wifey, that's just too unlikely. Pull up 6 deep just like the ISIS, pick your next move wisely.
You know, Yachty, when you go on a tirade about how you're so much better than many of your peers currently out right now, the sort of challenge that made me snicker kind of immediately, and then I followed up with, okay, prove it. I did not expect the follow-through to be a single with Kodak Black. Apparently this is tied into an upcoming project of his called Michigan Boy Boat, where Lil Yachty was gonna go work with a bunch of Detroit MCs. So obviously your introduction to the project is with a rapper from Florida, and the song is terrible. Why are you riding this weedy synth reject from Whole Lotta Red and then bringing no power or intensity to your vocals to ride off this sort of clanking percussion and bells, especially when you can't ride the beat for shit as you overstuff your bars with syllables and no sense of coherent flow. It is a horrible sign when Kodak Black, of all people, he's barely even mixed properly on top of this beat and he sounds considerably better than you do. And look, none of the content is remotely worth caring about. It's flexing, fucking women, killing people, the works. You've heard this hundreds of times before. But I'm more distracted that Lil Yachty thinks his 6'5" homie and his crew could play center in basketball. Yeah, I kept trying with that delusion with myself. It doesn't work. What I don't understand is that Lil Yachty's weird sing-rapping, at least initially, it was somewhat distinctive. It could probably even work in this environment, but his trap material is so dour and miserable and not playing to his strengths that this feels like a total dud. So yeah, it's bad. Next, number 61, Test Drive by Ariana Grande.
I just recline the seat when I want it. Give you a set of keys cause you own it. Pull up on me. Hey.
So here's something I really don't like about the whole deluxe reissue method. If you can still work some great songs on your album that you haven't released as singles, the deluxe reissue tells me you've got no interest in really doing so. And that just baffles me for Ariana Grande here. You're just gonna leave Off the Table with The Weeknd, Nasty, POV, you're not even gonna try to push any of them? I know your team has been mixed at best with single choice ever since at least Dangerous Woman, but this just feels like she's leaving money and career longevity on the table here. But alright, fine. Here's a cut from the deluxe reissue that apparently was actually gonna be on the album instead of Love Language. And you know what? In comparison with how Dua Lipa just dropped a dud last week, this actually does seem pretty decent. Yeah, you know what? The skittering percussion, I will say it feels kinda undercooked. You wish there was a little bit more body there. But this could probably join Motive as one of the few songs on the album that had an actual sense of pop tempo, and the super sweet vocal arrangement, it's a natural fit opposite all the flutters of strings going on, until the song ends after just around 2 minutes. There's no bridge, there's no solo of any kind in the instrumental, just after the second verse, the song just stops abruptly, and I instantly get why this was left off the album proper. It's not even finished here. So I guess I'll ask again, is pushing this really worth moving off the other better songs on positions? Because I mean, it's okay, but there's better. Number 54, Telepatia by Kali Uchis. I remember getting so much backlash when I reviewed Isolation back in 2018. I don't think I pronounced her name correctly, and me only being lukewarm on the project that got so much critical acclaim meant that I was on the outside looking in. And given that we're now looking at a single that went viral on Spanish language TikTok from an album that I'll admit I did not hear from last year and had a ton of buzz, I felt even further out of the loop than normal. And thus with this song, honestly, I'm still kind of lukewarm, but I guess I hear more of the appeal. The synths and the acoustics feel kind of gauzy and oddly underweight, and they clash opposite the hazy vocal layering in a really odd way, which is kind of a shame because a lot of the supple underlying groove here is really nice. It feels more organic, and even before the song goes into a warp breakdown to close things out, and it does kind of match the dreamlike feel of being so infatuated that just thinking about this person is like making love telepathically. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of the issues that I did have with Isolation. She's a potent performer, but the production has never felt quite as refined as it could to go further. I'm also left thinking this song could afford to be a little bit more dreamlike and languid and organic. But then I realized I'm just imagining a Jhené Aiko song, who I think delivers this particular sound just way more consistently, especially off of her underrated 2017 album Trip. Still, it is likable. I get why it works. Maybe it'll grow on me. And finally, number 53, Clouds by NF.
Appalling, so much I'm not divulging. Been stalling, I think I hear applauding. They're calling. Mixtapes aren't my thing, but it's been awfully exhausting.
I replied to a tweet from a fellow music critic just over a week ago surrounding why more critics don't talk about NF, where I highlighted that he makes boring, underwritten material that can't back up its attempts at bombast, and thus is just not that interesting, especially when I can't remember any of his unique bars. I've called him the Christian version of Logic before, but at least Logic can be somewhat fun. But hey, I get why there's a ton of white guys who adore this approach to rap music, so here's a cut from his upcoming mixtape later this month. And here's the thing, a couple years back in this series, I did say that NF's song The Search was pretty decent in paying off its crescendo and bombast, even if I thought the whole self-aware content ran out of steam about a third of the way through the song. Well, okay, this is that, but in prepping people for that upcoming mixtape and playing into how great he is, the song just winds up being a lot less likable. For one, the pacing of the track is a total mess, feeling very stop and start and not really allowing a significant crescendo and build melodically. And even if you've got all of that bombast in the strings and the trap percussion, it starts feeling increasingly flat when your bragging is increasingly undercooked, lacking detail and being all about the charts. I mean, I'm not hearing any of the genius here by any means. Yeah, the bars are well constructed, but this doesn't even have the introspection into his depression, or even braggadocious bars that really punch out. More just assuming greatness by birthright and his sales figures. At least later stage Eminem is more creative in some of his punchlines. It's gonna go down weird lyrical rabbit holes for better and worse, but this can't even take that risk, so it feels very hollow and antiseptic. It can't even back up its attempts at bombast. I'll say it again. I'm not saying it's bad, but it sure as hell's forgettable. And for a song that is trying to go this hard, that might be the bigger failure. That's all I'm saying. Now granted, this week it's not even close to the worst here. Zaza by 6ix9ine is getting that. I shouldn't have to justify why, but we are gonna have a tie for the dishonorable mention. Hit Bout It by Lil Yachty and Kodak Black, and Hello by the late Pop Smoke and A Boogie with the Hoodie. Really, on any given day, all three of these could be counted as the worst. They're all that bad. The best, though, yeah, Made For You by Jake Owen's probably the best here, but for honorable mention, I also feel like I'm gonna give a tie, and it might be a bit surprising. The Business by Tiësto and Chicken Tendies by Clinton Kane. What can I say? I'm surprised, but they both mostly work. I like them both. Next week, you know what, I just have no idea because I'm not seeing the obvious chart breakthrough here. We will have to see. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.